The Marauder-class ship drifted silently above the small human colony world of New Haven. Its dark hull reflected no light, and its stealth systems kept it hidden from the basic sensor arrays of the settlement below. Inside the bridge, Captain Dux studied the settlement's layout with what passed for a smile on his scaled face. "A learning center," he rumbled, pointing at a large building near the colony center. "Perfect. Young specimens are always the most valuable in the slave markets." His second-in-command, Officer Rax, shifted uncomfortably. "Captain, our intelligence reports about humans are concerning. Perhaps we should choose an easier target." Dux waved away the concern with one of his forearms. "They're just stories. Look how peaceful their colony is. No weapons, minimal defenses. These humans are soft." The raid began at what the locals called lunch break. The Marauders' transport pods descended rapidly, their electromagnetic pulses disabling the simple security systems. Teams of armed raiders, each standing over 7 feet tall and covered in natural armor plating, stormed into the learning center's courtyard. Inside, the children were just finishing their meals. The first sign of trouble came when the lights flickered and went out. Then the doors burst open. Everyone on the ground. Dux bellowed through his translator. He expected screaming, chaos, the usual terror that made capturing primitives so easy. Instead, he was met with something unexpected. The children, ranging from what humans called 3rd grade to 6th grade, moved with surprising coordination. The older ones immediately gathered the younger ones behind them. A small boy with red hair stepped forward. "You're making a big mistake," he said calmly. Too calmly for a child facing armed raiders. One of Dux's warriors laughed. Listen to the tiny thing trying to sound brave. But Dux felt something he hadn't expected. Unease. These children weren't crying. They weren't panicking. They were organizing. "Secure them," he ordered. 30 specimens should be enough. The raiders moved forward with their containment fields. The children didn't resist physically. They couldn't at their size, but they maintained an eerie composure. A young girl with blonde hair caught Dux's eye. She was studying his weapons, his armor, making mental notes. What kind of children were these? As they loaded their captives into the transport pods, Dux's communication officer rushed forward. "Captain, we're receiving multiple emergency broadcasts from other alien vessels in the sector." "Ignore them," Dux commanded. "We'll be gone before anyone can respond." The first message played anyway. "Attention raider vessel. You have committed a grave error. Return the human offspring immediately. This is not a negotiation. It is a warning for your survival." More messages flooded in, each more urgent than the last. Species that were usually enemies of each other all sent the same warning. Return the human children. Back on the Marauder, Dux watched as his men secured the children in a holding bay. They were eerily quiet, those young humans. They simply watched, observed, and whispered among themselves. One of the guards reported that they seemed to be taking turns memorizing details about the ship's layout. "They're just children," Dux told himself. "What harm could they possibly do?" In the holding bay, the red-haired boy turned to the blonde girl. "Did you see how their door controls work?" She nodded. "Simple electromagnetic locks, just like what we learned about in science class last week." "Good," he replied. "Get everyone ready. They have no idea what they just did." As the Marauder prepared to jump to hyperspace, Dux received one final message. It was from an ancient trading species known for their wisdom. "You took human children. Their parents will come. Every human within 100 light years will come. You don't understand what you've done. They're not like other species' offspring. They're not helpless. They're clever. They're resourceful. And most importantly, they belong to the most protective and vengeful species in the known galaxy. May whatever gods you believe in have mercy on your souls." Dux deleted the message with a scoff. Surely they were all overreacting. He had no way of knowing that this would be the last mistake he would ever make. The holding bay of the Marauder was designed to contain the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Its walls were reinforced with energy fields, and cameras monitored every corner. But none of these systems were designed with human children in mind. "The vents are bigger than the ones at school, Tom," the red-haired boy whispered as he studied the ceiling. Around him, 30 children sat in small groups, each focused on different tasks. They weren't huddled in fear, they were planning. Amy, the blonde girl who had caught the captain's attention earlier, was teaching the younger ones how to count the guard patrol timing. "Just like counting rhythm in music class," she explained. 1, 2, 3, guard walks by. 4, 5, 6, guard looks in. The aliens watched through their monitors, puzzled by the children's behavior. Most captured species would be crying or begging for release. These young humans were taking notes. "Sir," one of the guards reported to Captain Dux, "they're asking strange questions about our ship's waste disposal system." Dux rumbled with amusement. "Let them ask. What harm could come from such questions?" In the holding bay, a small boy named Pete raised his hand during the next guard patrol. "Mr. Alien, sir, where does the toilet stuff go?" The guard, amused by the child's apparent innocence, explained their waste recycling system. He didn't notice Tom and Amy exchanging knowing looks. "Just like the diagram in our Earth science textbook," Tom whispered. "Their whole water system is connected." The first incident happened during the night cycle. The ship's environmental controls suddenly went haywire in one section, flooding 3 decks with cleaning foam. The aliens blamed a system malfunction. They didn't notice that Billy, age 9, had spent 2 hours asking innocent questions about the cleaning protocols, memorizing every detail the amused guards shared. In their quarters, Officer Rax confronted Captain Dux. "The children are too quiet, too organized. This isn't normal behavior for captives. They're adapting to their situation," Dux dismissed. "It makes our job easier." Then the ship's lights began flickering in patterns. The aliens assumed it was another malfunction. They didn't realize that Lisa, who had won her school's science fair with a project on electrical circuits, had figured out how to access a maintenance panel through a small gap that only a child's hands could reach. The children established their own organization. The older ones created a rotation schedule, ensuring someone was always awake and watching. The younger ones were tasked with looking as cute and harmless as possible, asking endless questions that seemed meaningless but revealed crucial information about the ship's operations. "Did you know?" Jenny told a guard. "On Earth, we learn about machines in school. This ship is so interesting." The guard, flattered by her apparent admiration, spent 20 minutes explaining their engine cooling system. That night, the engine room reported unexplained temperature fluctuations. In their makeshift command center, a corner of the holding bay hidden from cameras by carefully arranged blankets, Tom and Amy updated their ship schematic. It was drawn in crayon, the only writing tool they'd been allowed to keep. "The air vents connect to the main computer cooling system," Amy pointed out. "And look where they lead." Tom nodded. "Just like the ventilation project we did in class. One small change in airflow." A young girl named Kate approached them. "The guards think I'm crying in the corner," she whispered. "But I've been counting their shift changes. There's a 7-minute gap between night patrols." The aliens continued to watch their captives, noting their unusual calmness but missing the subtle signs of organization. They didn't understand that on Earth, children played strategy games, solved puzzles, and learned basic engineering concepts for fun. They didn't realize that every question, every seemingly innocent observation, was building toward something. In his quarters, Captain Dux reviewed the day's reports. Minor system malfunctions, environmental control issues, strange power fluctuations, all explainable, all minor, all surely unconnected. He didn't notice that his ship was already under siege, from the inside. And in the holding bay, 30 young humans continued their work, proving why taking Earth's children was the worst mistake any alien species could make. The Grand Council of the Galactic Alliance called an emergency session for the first time in 50 years. Representatives from 100 species gathered in the massive chamber, their voices filled with urgency and fear. Ambassador Krell, a veteran diplomat from one of the oldest spacefaring races, took the central platform. His tentacles trembled as he addressed the gathering. "They took human children," he announced. The chamber erupted in gasps and murmurs. 30 of them. From a learning center. "Have they lost their minds?" shouted a representative from the warrior Terek species. "Even we know better than to take human offspring." Meanwhile, aboard the Marauder, more accidents continued to plague the ship. The raiders couldn't understand why their advanced vessel was experiencing so many problems. The ship's cook reported that the food processor was producing nothing but sweet desserts. He didn't know that Ruby, age 10, had spent hours asking about how it worked, comparing it to her mother's kitchen appliances. "Captain," Officer Rax reported, "our long-range communications are receiving hundreds of messages, all with the same warning." Dux, still confident in his decision, played one of the messages. A hologram appeared. An ancient being from the collector species, known for their vast knowledge of all galactic races. "Return the children immediately," the collector warned. "Humans are not like other species. Their young are not helpless. They are taught to think, to build, to solve problems. And their parents will tear apart the galaxy to find them." In the holding bay, the children's plan was progressing. They had discovered that the ship's maintenance robots were programmed with simple learning algorithms, just like the educational robots they used in school. "Watch this," Tom whispered to Amy. He approached the clinging robot that had entered their bay. "Hey buddy, want to play a game? We'll teach you some new tricks." The robot, designed to learn and adapt to better serve the ship, began receiving new instructions. The children taught it games that just happened to involve moving small objects to specific locations and creating distractions. Back in the council chamber, Ambassador Krell shared footage from previous encounters with human children. 3 years ago, a human child disabled a military-grade security system with nothing but a toy computer, he explained. They called it coding practice. 2 years before that, a group of human children rebuilt a crashed shuttle using parts from their playground equipment. They called it a science project. The chamber watched in horror as more examples were shown. Human children turning household items into complex machines. Human children solving mathematical problems for fun. Human children learning about chemistry, physics, and engineering as part of their basic education. And now, Krell continued, 30 of these young humans are trapped on a ship. They are not panicking. They are not crying. They are thinking. They are planning. And their parents are coming. Aboard the Marauder, the children had begun phase 2 of their plan. The maintenance robots, now reprogrammed with new games, started moving small tools and parts from one end of the ship to the other. "Sir," a guard reported to Dux, "the human children are requesting more educational materials. They say they're bored." Dux, thinking this showed their acceptance of captivity, approved the request. He didn't realize he had just given them access to more resources for their plans. The children began teaching other children, just as they did at school. But instead of normal lessons, they were sharing their observations about the ship's weaknesses. "The ventilation system," Amy explained to the younger ones, "is just like the wind tunnels we made in science class. If we change the airflow here and here," she pointed to their crayon diagram. More warning messages flooded the Marauders' communications. They are not just children. They are human children. Their entire species will hunt you down. Return them before it's too late. Dux continued to ignore the warnings, even as his ship's systems acted more strangely by the hour. He didn't understand that he wasn't holding prisoners. He was holding 30 young minds trained by humanity's education system, working together to ensure his complete defeat. And somewhere in space, the first waves of human response ships were already on their way. The emergency alert reached Earth's Colonial Defense Force at 1432 Standard Time. Within minutes, the response was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "My daughter is on that ship." The words came from Commander Jack Wilson, his voice steady, but his hands gripping the control panel until his knuckles turned white. His ship, the EDF Thunderbolt, was the first to break orbit. He wasn't alone. Behind him, a fleet was forming. Military vessels, civilian ships, mining crafts, and even retrofitted cargo haulers. Parents, relatives, and an entire species driven by one of their most powerful instincts: protecting their young. "We've got transport signatures," reported Lieutenant Emma Parker, whose son Pete was among the taken. "The raider ship is heading toward the outer rim." In a nearby star system, an alien mining fleet picked up the approaching human vessels. Their captain immediately ordered all ships to move aside, broadcasting on all frequencies. "Let them pass. They're hunting for their children. Don't get in their way." Aboard the Marauder, the children's influence was spreading through the ship's systems like a virus. The maintenance robots, now programmed with what the children called special games, had begun repositioning critical repair equipment throughout the ship. "Captain," Officer Rex reported, his voice shaking, "we're detecting multiple fleet movements in nearby systems. They're all human ships." Dux finally began to feel the first real stirrings of concern. "How many?" "All of them, sir. Every human ship within 50 light-years is converging on our position." And Rax paused, checking his readings again. "They're being joined by ships from other species." The alien races who had warned about taking human children were now actively helping the human fleet. They provided fuel, coordinates, and tactical information. Some even offered their own ships to the cause. In the holding bay, Tom and Amy had established what they called mission control behind a wall of carefully arranged sleeping mats. Their crayon-drawn maps of the ship now covered hidden sections of the floor. "The robots have moved everything into position," Tom whispered. "Just like we planned." Amy nodded, looking at their makeshift clock made from counting guard rotations. "My mom's a fleet commander," she said. "She always says the best rescue is the one you start yourself." The children had spent days appearing to play simple games, but each game had a purpose. They played hide-and-seek to map the blind spots in the security systems. They had drawing contests that were actually ship schematics. They created secret codes that were really signals for coordinating their actions. In Earth's Colonial Defense Headquarters, Admiral Chen watched as the rescue fleet grew. "We're picking up signals from 17 different alien species," his aide reported. "They're all offering assistance." "Of course they are," Chen replied. "They know what's coming. There's a reason humanity's children are protected by galactic law. Today, these raiders learn why." A message spread through the alien networks. "The humans are coming for their young. Stay out of their way or help them. There is no middle ground." The Marauder's systems continued to act strangely. The lights would flicker in patterns that seemed random, but were actually messages being passed between different groups of children. The cleaning robots would malfunction in ways that just happened to block security sensors at crucial moments. "Captain," Rax pleaded, "we need to return the children. Look at these fleet movements. Every human military vessel, every armed civilian ship, every transport capable of combat. They're all coming. And they're angry." Dux, finally beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistake, watched as his ship's sensors showed more and more human vessels appearing at the edge of their range. In the holding bay, the children felt the ship's subtle course changes. They knew their parents were coming, but they weren't going to wait to be rescued. "Ready?" Tom asked, looking at the other children. 30 young faces nodded back at him. Phase 3 of their plan was about to begin. And somewhere in space, the largest rescue fleet ever assembled was closing in, driven by humanity's most powerful force: parents protecting their children. Deep in the maintenance tunnels of the Marauder, A small army was forming, not of soldiers, but of reprogrammed service robots, all operating under new instructions created by 30 inventive human children. Remember in computer class, Tom explained to the younger kids, when we programmed those cleaning bots to play soccer. This is just like that, but bigger. The ship's maintenance robots were simple machines designed to learn basic tasks through repetition. They had never encountered human children before, children who had been programming robots for fun since kindergarten. The results were unprecedented. "Look," Amy whispered, pointing at their latest creation. A cleaning robot was now carrying small tools and parts, moving them through the ship's service corridors based on the children's instructions. "They're just like the helper bots we built for the science fair." The aliens had made a crucial mistake in their assessment of human children. They saw the kids playing with the robots and thought they were just entertaining themselves. They didn't realize that on Earth, robotics was considered a normal part of elementary education. In the ship's control room, the warning signs were becoming impossible to ignore. "Captain," a technician reported, "the maintenance systems are acting strange. The robots are moving equipment we didn't authorize, and they're not responding to our override codes." Duck stared at the reports in disbelief. How could children possibly affect our maintenance systems? The answer came from an unexpected source, a message from an alien education specialist. Human children learn robotics as part of their basic schooling. They consider it play. Did you not know this? In the holding bay, the children had divided into teams, each with a specific role in their plan. The younger ones kept the guards distracted with endless questions and cute behavior, while the older ones coordinated their robot allies through a series of hand signals and coded messages. "Katie," Tom called softly, "show everyone what you found in the robot's programming." Katie, who had won her school's coding competition 3 years in a row, pulled out their makeshift computer interface, created from parts the robots had brought them. "The base code is similar to our school robots. I can make them do anything we need." The maintenance robots began their coordinated effort. One by one, they started making small but crucial changes throughout the ship. A loose panel here, a relocated tool there, all building towards something bigger. "Sir," Officer Rax reported, growing increasingly nervous, "the robots are concentrating around critical systems. Engine cooling, life support, security networks." "They're just maintenance robots," Duck snapped, but his confidence was wavering. What harm could they possibly do? The answer came in the form of another warning message, this time from a species known for their technological expertise. "Human children are taught to see machines as tools and toys. They understand technology intuitively. Your simple maintenance robots are now their allies." In their hidden command center, the children were putting the final touches on their plan. They had created a network of robot helpers, each programmed with specific tasks that seemed harmless individually but formed part of a larger strategy. Just like when we reprogrammed the cafeteria robots at school to give us extra dessert, one child whispered, earning quiet giggles from the others. The aliens never realized that what they saw as primitive entertainment, children playing with robots, was actually their undoing. Every game, every interaction with the maintenance systems was part of a carefully orchestrated plan. "Ready for the next phase?" Amy asked, looking at their crayon-drawn timeline. Tom nodded, watching as another robot carefully moved into position. "Mom always says the best tools are the ones nobody notices, and nobody's noticing these robots." The children's alliance with the ship's maintenance systems was complete. Their mechanical friends were in position, waiting for the signal to begin the next phase of their escape plan. And somewhere in the ship's computer core, lines of code written by young hands began to spread through the system, preparing for what was to come. At exactly 300 ship time, when the night shift guards were at their most tired, the children's plan erupted into action. "Execute Operation Recess," Tom whispered. Throughout the holding bay, 30 children moved with practiced precision, each knowing their role perfectly. The first sign that something was wrong came when every maintenance robot on the ship activated simultaneously. Cleaning units began spraying their solutions in carefully planned patterns, making corridors slippery. Repair bots started removing panels they had quietly loosened over days. Service units began moving in formations that blocked security response paths. "Captain," Officer Rax's voice was almost a shriek. "We're losing control of all automated systems." Ducks rushed to the bridge, only to find chaos. The ship's lights began flashing in seizure-inducing patterns, programmed by children who had learned about photosensitive responses in their basic biology classes. The ventilation system, modified by small hands that understood airflow from making paper airplanes, began creating pressure differentials that made running impossible. In the holding bay, the children launched Phase 2. The younger ones began crying, not in fear, but in a coordinated performance that drew the guards' attention. Meanwhile, the older children used tools smuggled by their robot allies to access the maintenance shafts. "Remember," Amy told her team, just like the obstacle course at school. The ship's internal sensors, compromised by days of subtle reprogramming, showed nothing unusual. The guards never noticed as small figures moved through maintenance tunnels, using routes mapped during days of careful observation. Then the ship's computer core received new instructions, written by children who had learned coding by making computer games. Critical systems began experiencing random failures. Doors opened and closed on their own. Gravity plating fluctuated in precise patterns. "How?" Dux demanded, watching his ship fall into chaos. "They're just children." The answer came from his own security feeds. Scenes of children working with reprogrammed robots, using knowledge from their school lessons to systematically dismantle his ship's defenses. And then the human fleet arrived. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. A crew member shouted, They're everywhere." The children felt the ship shudder as the first warning shots were fired. Their parents had arrived, but the kids weren't done yet. They had their own rescue to finish. "Now," Tom signaled. Every reprogrammed robot on the ship began executing their final instructions. Security systems crashed. Doors locked and unlocked in patterns that trapped crew members and created clear paths for small figures to move through. Katie, monitoring from their makeshift command center, grinned. "The robots are doing exactly what we programmed them to do, just like our robotics project." The ship's crew found themselves fighting their own automated systems. Cleaning robots sprayed soap-like solutions in security checkpoints. Maintenance units blocked crucial corridors. And through it all, small shapes moved with purpose, using routes and methods planned over days of careful observation. "Captain," Rax reported, his voice shaking, "the human children. They're no longer in the holding bay." Duck stared at the security feeds in horror. The holding bay was empty, and his ship was in chaos, and on every screen, he could see evidence of what human children were capable of when they worked together. The children had orchestrated a symphony of chaos, using everything they'd learned in school: science, robotics, programming, even basic physics, to turn his own ship against him. And as the human fleet surrounded the Marauder, they received a transmission from inside the ship. It was Amy's voice, clear and confident. "This is the kids from New Haven Colony. We've disabled their systems, and we're heading to the main cargo bay. But watch out for the slippery floors. We had to use a lot of cleaning solution to make our plan work." The raiders had believed they were capturing helpless children. Instead, they had imprisoned 30 young minds trained by humanity's education system, who had turned their captivity into the ultimate group project. And now, as their parents arrived with overwhelming force, the children of New Haven Colony were showing the galaxy why taking human kids was the worst mistake any species could make. The rescue operation was practically over before it began. When the human fleet breached the Marauder's hull, they found most of their work had already been done. 30 children, led by Tom and Amy, had secured themselves in the cargo bay, using reprogrammed maintenance robots as a defensive line. "Mom," Amy called out as Commander Wilson's strike team entered. Sorry we started without you, but we had a really good plan. The ship's crew were found in various states of confusion and defeat. Some were trapped in corridors made impassable by cleaning solution. Others were locked in rooms by their own security systems. Captain Dux was discovered in his command center, surrounded by malfunctioning robots that kept offering him educational toys. "They're demons," he muttered as he was led away in restraints. "They turned everything against us, even the cleaning robots." The debrief at New Haven Colony's Administration Center became an instant legend. 30 children excitedly explained how they had used their school lessons to orchestrate their escape. "First, we had to understand their robot programming," Katie explained to the assembled military officers. "It was actually easier than the coding homework we did last month." Tom pulled out their crayon-drawn plans. "We used what we learned in science class about air circulation to mess up their life support." Annie remembered how to make their gravity go funny from our physics lesson about mass and weight. The military strategists were particularly impressed by their use of the maintenance robots. The children had essentially created their own automated army using nothing but school-level programming knowledge and their experience with educational robots. "We just taught them new games," Ruby explained, "like how we programmed the lunch helpers at school, but with more running around and carrying things." Within a week, the incident led to new galactic laws. The Sentient Species Protection Act was amended to include a special clause about human children. It read, in part, "Under no circumstances are human offspring to be separated from their guardians. Their problem-solving abilities, combined with their natural creativity and comprehensive early education, make them uniquely dangerous when threatened." In the following months, the children became minor celebrities across human space. Their story was used in schools as an example of practical application of classroom knowledge. Several education boards even suggested adding their escape plan to the curriculum as a case study. The alien races who had tried to warn the raiders felt vindicated. "We told them," Ambassador Krell announced to the Galactic Council. "Human children are not like other species young. They turn everything into a learning opportunity, even their own kidnapping." The maintenance robots from the Marauder were studied by various species, all amazed at how thoroughly the children had reprogrammed them. Several alien education specialists suggested implementing human-style early robotics education in their own schools. The most remarkable aspect, one alien researcher noted, was how they turned simple maintenance units into a coordinated escape force using only knowledge from their basic education. What other species teaches their children such skills as a matter of course? Back at New Haven Colony, life returned to normal, mostly. The Learning Center installed better security systems, though some argued that the existing security system of 30 clever children had proven more than adequate. Tom and Amy returned to their classes, where their adventure became a popular topic for show and tell. Their crayon-drawn escape plans were framed and hung in the school's science lab as inspiration for future students. The best part, Amy told her classmates, was using everything we learned in school. Who knew robotics class would be so useful? The incident became a cautionary tale, told in alien bars and trading posts across the galaxy. Remember those raiders who took human children? They thought they were getting easy targets. Instead, they got 30 young engineers in training who turned their own ship against them. And in the years that followed, whenever any alien species considered raiding a human settlement, they would remember the story of the Marauder and its fateful encounter with 30 ordinary human children who had simply paid attention in class. The final entry in the official report summed it up perfectly. The greatest defense of human children is not our weapons or our fleets. It's the fact that we teach them to think, create, and solve problems from the moment they can walk. To threaten such children is to invite defeat in ways you cannot imagine.